Hey, this is Lucas with FastCap, and I'm here to go over our new system, which is going to be called the Best Fence Universal System. And this system is pretty much exactly what we've always sold you as the dewalt DWX726 or dewalt gravity rise system, which is what you see right here. However, there's a lot of other stands now that are needing to use this exact system, so we're renaming it and adding a bunch of pieces to the hardware kit to make it completely universal, so it'll work for pretty much anything. So here you see the dewalt system, exactly how it's set up. This system, basically, you're going to have to cut your own piece of wood here. We're going to give you two of our bench mount style tabs that you can attach to that block of wood. You can also attach the saw to the block of wood and attach the block of wood to your stand. And then you're going to have two of these, what we call Part 67s, or Best Fence adapter blocks that will bolt down to the outside of your wings. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to go over how to set this up on our Bosch stand. There's already a video by Paul showing you how to make this exact setup for the dewalt stand. But for the Bosch stand, there's a few little differences, so I'm going to go over that, and I'm going to show you exactly how to do a whole setup that should work for absolutely any system. Before I get started though, I want to go over the Bosch T4B gravity rise stand. Bosch recently made a few changes to their stand. They didn't rename the stand, so the old one that I have right here and the new one are both called the T4B. The difference on the stands, there's two main ways you can tell which one you have. One of them is that the older T4B has these two round bars for the extendable wing. The new T4B has one square bar. So if you have one square bar, you do have the new stand. The other way you can tell is that the newer stand will have a red metal block right here on it that prevents you from mounting your saw any further to the left than the block allows. The block looks nothing like this. This is just to show you where it is, except for the color, it's red and it's right here. And the reason they put that on is that on the new T4B stand, when you go to fold it up, you'll have to loosen that, and of course you pull this handle here and it begins to fold. But on the new one, this bar right here will actually hit the bottom of your saw if the saw is too far to the left, and that will prevent you from being able to fold the stand up with the saw on it. And for most size saws, such as this rigid that I have on here, that's not going to be a problem. This sitting here is going to be a problem, but by removing this piece right here, you should pretty easily be able to get your tab. You'll want to set your saw first, of course, and tighten it down so that you know where it sits, so you're not too far left. But then you can remove this metal piece. And with all these smaller size saws, you should have no problem setting your normal Bosch tab up the way we've always had it set up with our Bosch system. And that's to use these Bosch adjustment blocks like you see here. Those go on, slide in that slot, and tighten down. Now, if your saw base measures from one mounting hole to the other, or from side to side, the width of your base, if that is more than 25.5 inches, measure it with a tape measure. If it's more than 25.5 inches, it's going to be so wide that set up against as far as you can go left, you're not going to have space to get your adjustment block to slide into the right-hand side because your saw is going to be sitting too far out here. So in that case, you're going to want to buy the universal system. If you have the dewalt gravity rise stand, you will definitely want to buy the universal system. And if you have a rigid gravity rise stand or a Mikita stand, this system is still the system for you. It works great for both of those saw stands as well. And so I'm going to go over how to set that up on here. All right, so for this example here, I'm going to be setting it up using this Milwaukee saw I have. It's one of the bigger ones I have here. This saw is only 25 inches, so it would actually work without doing this system, but I'm going to show you how to do it so that if you had a bigger saw than this, you can see how to do it. So for whatever your saw base width is, so I'm measuring 25, you're going to want to add at least 10 inches. I recommend 12 inches just to be safe and give yourself a little bit of wiggle room. The extra wood shouldn't really be in your way ever. So you're going to want to cut yourself out a piece of wood, and that saw is 25 inches, so I went with 37 inches. And then you want to measure how deep your saw is. This one's 14 inches. You want to add, about 6 or so to that to give yourself a little extra space. I went to 20 inches, so that was plus 6 on my board here. Cut out a nice rectangle, and all you want to do is, first thing, find your center line and mark it. So, next thing you want to do, go ahead and take your figure out where you want your saw mounting rails to sit first based on the saw and where your block is here, stopping the saw. Set your saw mounting rails in the right place. Then you can set your saw out of the way for a minute. And what you're going to want to do is we're going to want to mount this block of wood to the saw mounting rails just like you normally would with your saw. So, depending on your stand, you're going to have a different distance front to back that your holes sit apart. This one has quite a bit of adjustability, so I'm just going to pick a location. And you're going to have two options on the way you mount this. One is that you can mount the plank of wood to the saw mounting rails with the provided bolts that were included. And you can then use power head screws that come in the hardware kit that comes with this to just bolt the saw straight to the plank of wood. Your other option is you can do through holes in the board in the right locations for the holes in the saw, and then you can use the provided bolts to go all the way through the saw and the plank of wood into the saw mounting rail. And so for the saw I'm using here, the bolts that came with the Bosch stand are not actually quite long enough to go through the saw base and through the plank of wood and into the saw mounting rail. So I'm going to bolt the plank of wood down, and then I'm going to go ahead and use the power heads to bolt the saw straight to the plank of wood. I'm going to go ahead and set my plank of wood on here, line up my left and right lines with the holes in the saw mounting rails. I marked these left and right lines at 25 inches, which is the width of my saw base, just so that I know where it will sit. I'm of course marking these holes in arbitrary locations where I know that they'll match up with the saw mounting rails where I have them set. Exact locations are not super important. Once you have all four of those marks, you'll have two drill bits included in your hardware kit. The biggest one is a 1/4 inch bit. So if you have larger, thicker bolts, you might want to grab a bigger drill bit. I'm using a 3/8 here personally. And right on all your marks, you just need to make some through holes in your plank of wood. If you have long enough bolts though, you can just make your through holes in exactly the right place where they match up with the saw. You can even do that just by setting the saw right on the plank of wood, using a Sharpie and marking right through the holes so you don't even have to measure. But since I measured mine out to be matched up with the saw mounting rails, I'm just going to go ahead and bolt the plank of wood down as if it's my saw, using the through holes that I drilled on my marks.
Okay. That's sweet, thanks. Don't worry, this part will get sped up and everything. I'll make it look easy.
And as you're doing that, it's easiest to get the back two in first, but you want to leave those a little bit loose so you can still adjust the plank of wood forward and backward so you can get it right down in the groove in the saw mounting rail for the front. So once you have all four bolts hammered in nice and tight on your plank of wood, you can go ahead and put your saw on there. Now you can put it on there pretty much wherever you want. Try to get it fairly square on there and make sure that your holes aren't interfering with those bolts. With most saws, you should be able to cut out those bolts so you don't even see them. You get a nice flush look when you're all done, like I did right there. And the squarer you make it, the easier it's going to be to do the rest of your installation there. And so you should have a square drive bit included in your hardware kit, along with a number of power head screws. You have options of 3.5 inch power head screws with 1 inch nylon spacers. These are for if you have a shorter saw bed. You can put the spacer underneath the saw, screw down in, and that's going to raise your saw bed up 1 inch. But this is a bigger saw, I'm not going to need to do that. So I'm just going to use 4 of these shortest power head screws. These are the 1.5 inch ones. And all I got to do is go through the holes that are in here. now you got a nice solid connection. Not going anywhere. So once you're done with that, it's time for the easy part, which is putting your tabs on. So this comes with what we call our bench mount system, which means that you have some through holes in this base plate. There's two different options you have. You can use these round holes, and that's going to make it so this isn't going anywhere ever, and you can make sure once you have it set up and tightened down, it's always going to be adjusted right. Or you can put two screws through this slide piece, and that's going to allow you to have a little extra adjustability if you loosen those screws and then want to retighten them. So in order to get this set up, first thing you want to do is extend your wings out all the way. And to figure out how to get this put in and lined up the best you possibly can, it's actually going to be easiest to put your fence on with your outside blocks too, mark where everything goes, and then bolt it down. So I'm going to show you how that works here. So here's my fence extrusion. I have one bench mount pad and one of my adapter blocks. And what you can do is pop the pad into the fence. So once you have the plastic piece snapped in, you want to line this hole up with the center of it, and you should be able to get this lock pin in the hole that's drilled in that plastic piece. Then you want to take your outside adapter block and snap it into your fence as well. And you're going to figure out where it goes right about now. You're going to want to extend the wing all the way and then slide this adapter block so that when the fence is up flush to your saw here, this is sitting right on top of the outside of your wing here. So right about there. So once you have these plastic pieces both snapped in, you can see how my fence is sitting at quite a downward angle here. So once you loosen this red knob, you can slide this whole metal piece up and down, get your fence just about leveled out, and then tighten this back up. And once you got it there, you're going to want to mark where you're going to bolt these down. So I'm going to move this around until my fence looks about flush. Remember that I have some adjustment I can do afterwards, so I don't have to get it absolutely perfect. Then I'm going to take my Sharpie, and I'm just going to mark out where I want these to be. So I'll mark there, and then I'm going to mark out around the tab on my block of wood here too, so I know where to put that. Once you got that done, you can take this lock pin out, and you can take your fence off. You'll have to pop this piece back out again, obviously. And now you can pull stuff down. So, put it in your kit. You have a couple options. What I'm going to use for this application are the 2-inch metal tapping screws. You also have included, though, some 1/4-20 nuts and bolts. And so you can always drill out using the included drill bit, which is the right size for it. You can drill through your metal, and you can do a nut and bolt application too, which might be a little bit more solid, but the metal tapping screw is the easy, fast way to get it done. All you got to do is put it through the hole once you have that lined up right, and it's self-drilling, so just start screwing, and it'll get itself down in there nice and tight all on its own. Put 2 of those in. I'm remembering to try to center these on the slot so that I have forward and back adjustment if I need it later. Once you got those bolted down, I'm going to go ahead and use more of the 1.5-inch power head screws, the same ones I bolted the saw down with. And I'm going to mount my pad to the plank of wood. 2 of these should hold it down. And I'm just trying to get it right where I marked it. Once you got that set on there nice and firm, go ahead and put your fence extrusion back on. And then all you got to do is turn some knobs to adjust the fence to match up. I recommend using a level for the level across the bed of the saw. You want to hold it firm to the bed of the saw and adjust the fence until you see no gap. There's this screw on the back of the pad here. That's going to move your fences up and down. And there's this one on the front, and that's going to move it forward or back. In the hardware kit for this system, as well as your 2-inch metal tapping screws, your 1.5 wood screws, and your 1/4-inch drill bit that we've already talked about. You also have your 3.5-inch wood screws with spacers, which I mentioned for shorter saws. You have your 1/4-20 nuts and bolts that I mentioned for giving a more solid connection on the outside. And then you also have a Allen key and a square drive bit, and you have a number 31 drill bit, and you can use that drill bit to drill another hole in the fence in any custom location you want, so that you can make that fence sit as far in or out as you want and still have that hole match up with the hole the lock pin needs to go in by drilling your own. There's an instruction video on how to do that on the webpage as well. So whether you have a rigid stand, you have the new Bosch T4B stand with a large saw, you have the Mikita stand like this one here, or you have the dewalt DWX726 stand. This system should work awesome for you.